Most people believe that once they hold a valid United States passport, international travel is straightforward and secure. The general assumption is that if your passport is unexpired, legally issued, and in your possession, then nothing can go wrong. For decades, that assumption mostly held true. But as we move into early 2026, a series of unusual and troubling cases has shown that the reality of international travel may be more complicated than many travelers realize. In recent months, several U.S. citizens have reported discovering serious passport-related issues only after leaving the country. These individuals were not informed in advance. They were not contacted by U.S. authorities before traveling, and in most cases, they had successfully passed airline check-in and departure screening. The problem surfaced only when they arrived overseas, where foreign immigration authorities informed them that their passports had been flagged as lost, stolen, or otherwise invalid in international systems. To be clear, there is no official announcement from the U.S. government stating that passport systems are failing on a large scale. There is no advisory telling Americans not to travel. These incidents appear to be rare and isolated. However, the consequences for the people involved were severe enough to raise serious questions about how passport information is shared, how errors occur, and what travelers can realistically do to protect themselves. Many of these cases came to public attention through social media platforms where travelers documented their experiences in real time. Some shared videos from airports, others posted updates after returning home, and a few continued documenting their attempts to resolve the situation with government agencies. While social media is not an official source of verification, the consistency across multiple unrelated cases has made it difficult to dismiss these stories as coincidences. One traveler, commonly referred to online as Parker, described flying from Miami to Thailand with his partner. His departure from the United States was uneventful. Airline staff accepted his passport, his boarding pass was issued, and there were no warnings or alerts at the airport. However, upon arrival in Thailand, immigration officials informed him that his passport had been flagged as lost or stolen in international databases. As a result, he was denied entry and deported. What made this case particularly confusing was what happened afterward. Once Parker returned to the United States, he contacted U.S. passport authorities to understand why his document had been flagged. According to his account, domestic agencies initially showed no record of his passport being reported lost or stolen. It later emerged that the flag may have been placed shortly after the passport was issued, possibly before it even reached him. How that happened and who initiated the report remains unclear. Another traveler, Marcy, experienced a similar issue upon arrival in Rome. Italian immigration officials informed her that her passport had been flagged. Unlike some others, she was eventually allowed to return to the United States, but only after facing questioning, delays, and additional scrutiny. Back home, she was required to swear under oath that she had never reported her passport stolen. Despite this, she still had to pay the standard fee to obtain a replacement passport. For her, the financial cost was frustrating, but the emotional stress and disruption to her travel plans were far worse. In yet another case, a traveler reported that her passport was confiscated at JFK Airport after she returned from Spain. According to her account, officials informed her that her passport had been marked as lost years earlier. This revelation was especially troubling because she had used the same passport multiple times for international travel and had even used it to apply for and maintain global entry status. If the passport had truly been invalid for years, how had it continued to function across multiple systems? A separate case involved a woman named Rose, who claimed that her passport records appeared to be missing entirely from the system. Along with her passport issues, her global entry status was revoked without warning. She documented her efforts to resolve the issue, which included contacting multiple agencies, visiting government offices, and even reaching out to her congressional representative. Ultimately, she was able to visit a national passport agency office in person and receive a new passport, but no clear explanation was provided for how or why her information had been removed. What ties all of these cases together is not just the inconvenience, but the lack of clear answers. In most situations, travelers were told that agencies had no prior knowledge of the issue or that records did not align across different systems. This points to a deeper problem, not necessarily malicious intent, but potential breakdowns in communication between domestic passport databases, international law enforcement systems, and border control agencies in other countries. International travel relies on shared data. When a passport is reported lost or stolen, that information can be entered into international databases used by border authorities worldwide. Once a passport is flagged in those systems, foreign governments are not obligated to accept explanations from travelers or even from U.S. officials in real time. Their responsibility is to enforce their own border laws, and if a passport appears invalid, entry can be denied immediately. This creates a serious problem for travelers because there is currently no publicly available way to check whether your passport has been flagged in international systems before you travel. You may verify that your passport is valid domestically, that it is unexpired, and that it was legally issued, but none of that guarantees that there are no discrepancies elsewhere. Airlines are often mentioned in these discussions, but their role is limited. Airlines are required to verify that a passenger has a passport and any required visas, but they do not have the authority or responsibility to investigate international flagging databases in depth. If a passport scans as valid at check-in, the airline generally allows boarding. This means that travelers may only discover a problem after landing when it is too late to turn back without serious consequences. Being denied entry or deported from a foreign country can be extremely costly. Travelers may be required to purchase last-minute return tickets, pay fines, or cover additional accommodation costs while waiting for arrangements to be made. Emergency passport services can also be expensive, and not all situations can be resolved quickly. Beyond the financial burden, there is also the emotional stress of being detained, questioned, or stranded in a foreign country. So far, there is no official explanation confirming a single cause behind these incidents. There's been no evidence presented of widespread fraud, hacking, or intentional targeting. Some experts have suggested that clerical errors, delayed updates, or mismatched records between agencies could be responsible. Others point to the increasing complexity of global data sharing systems where a small mistake can propagate across multiple platforms without being immediately detected. For travelers, the most important takeaway is not panic, but preparation. While these cases are rare, their impact is significant enough that awareness matters. Monitoring official communications is one practical step. Emails from the Department of State or Global Entry should not be ignored or sent to spam folders, as some travelers reported receiving notifications at unusual hours. Carrying backup identification is another simple but important measure. While a driver's license or national ID cannot replace a passport internationally, having multiple forms of identification can help establish identity if problems arise. Keeping copies of your passport, both digital and physical, stored separately from the original document can also be helpful. Travel insurance is often overlooked, but these situations highlight why it matters. Emergency travel disruptions, deportations, and unexpected rebookings can quickly become expensive. Insurance does not solve passport issues, but it can reduce the financial damage. If problems occur abroad, contacting the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate should be a priority. While they cannot override foreign immigration decisions, they can assist with documentation, communication, and emergency travel arrangements. Some travelers have also found that resolving complex issues requires visiting a national passport agency office in person once back in the United States, as phone and online systems may not always reflect the full picture. The topic of dual citizenship often comes up in these discussions. Some travelers legally hold passports from more than one country, which can provide flexibility in certain situations. This is not an option for everyone, and it is not a solution to systemic issues, but it does highlight how redundancy can matter when travel systems fail. It is important to emphasize again that these incidents do not mean that U.S. passports are suddenly unreliable or that international travel is unsafe. Millions of Americans travel abroad every year without issue. What these cases show is that rare administrative errors can have serious consequences, and those consequences often fall entirely on the traveler. In a world where border enforcement, data sharing, and international coordination are becoming more complex, the margin for error can feel smaller. Travelers who understand that reality are better positioned to respond calmly and effectively if something goes wrong. Awareness does not mean fear, it means knowing that even well established systems can fail and that preparation is a form of protection. Staying informed, keeping documents organized, and understanding where to turn for help are practical steps that apply to every traveler, regardless of how often they fly. If you travel internationally, especially frequently, these stories are worth paying attention to, not because they predict what will happen to you, but because they reveal how interconnected and fragile modern travel systems can be. The goal is not to discourage travel, but to encourage informed travel. As more information becomes available and investigations continue, clearer explanations may emerge. Until then, travelers should focus on what they can control: their documents, their planning, and their awareness. In today's travel environment, being prepared is no longer optional. It is part of traveling responsibly.